right, ready when you are.
Hi, I'm Jeff with Monroe Public Library, and welcome to another installment of I Made This and So Can You. I'm in the cookbook section, and Monroe Public Library is lucky enough to have over 1,000 cookbooks, 1,003 when I checked on it. So I'm going to take one of these guys, check it out, take it home, and I'm going to make some croissants. All right, now we're going to get things started. We're going to make the dough, which is sort of our first step, because we want to get that rising before we can do any of the other things. One of the things that makes croissants take so long is that there are several different risings and several different times when we're chilling materials. So it's not a lot of work in the actual making it, but it is a lot of waiting. So we want to hurry up and get this done so we can start to wait. So we're going to start. Here's our 1 1/4 cups, and this is just cold milk. And I love this because this is just going to be really simple. We're going to add this, and then we've whisked all of our dry ingredients, which is our flour, our yeast, our salt, and a little bit of sugar. And we're just going to let that guy sort of plop in there. And so this is the part where we're going to cut away for a minute, because this is going to start on low speed with a dough hook. And this is going to take about 5 minutes. Okay, we're taking a quick stop because when I look at this and as we're mixing, if you look, we're supposed to be mixing, but the dough is sticking more to the sides of the pan and the bottom than it is to itself. That's our sign, and that's one of the reasons that you always have a little bit of flour on hand. You always start with a little bit less than the recipe calls for. We're now going to shake in just a little bit more flour, and so if we can get that dough to stick to itself and work for us rather than just sticking to the bottom of the pan. So I'm going to put that in, give it a second. Now it'll work its magic. And hopefully when we come back, we'll be at that 5-minute mark and we'll be ready to add a little butter and be done with it. Okay, if you look at it now, you'll see that as we mix, see how it's a little bit less at the bottom, it's more sticking to itself and it's pulling all of the rest of the flour and goodies off the side of the bowl. So now we are ready to add a little bit of butter. It's the final step before it's ready to start to rise. Here's quick 2 tablespoons of butter, as the recipe calls for. I've both done this step and not done this step making croissants in the past. The biggest thing that I've had for this, I don't notice much difference in flavor, and part of that is because we're about to add a whole big whack of butter. That, remember, we made that earlier and put it in the fridge. But this seems to make it stick just a little bit less during the rising points. In other words, when we've got the plastic wrap over it, it just makes it so it pulls off nicely without making sort of a crusty surface on the croissants. So we're just going to start this, and then we're going to put it in the cold room to rise. And by the next time we get together, it will be time to form it and roll it out, put a little butter in it. So see you in a little bit. All right, well, I'm about to do the butter, which is the part of it that provides the super flaky layers of the croissant. I have a board scraper here, and I'm going to use this to work a little bit of flour into the butter, which is going to make that butter just melt a little bit more slowly during the baking process. That's going to provide those air pockets that make that flakiness and that soft, sort of delicious, pillowy inside when we're done with it. This part can also be done in a food processor if you want to do it quickly. Just use your shred attachment and add a little flour. But so what we're going to do, I've already cut some of this up. And now I'm going to come down and just cut these into little blobs. We've previously cleaned our surface that we're going to work on now. Get these little guys out a little bit. We're just on the edge of too soft here, so we're going to do this fairly quickly. Maybe take a break in the middle. This is just our all-purpose flour again. 2 tablespoons. We're just going to sprinkle it into the top of it, and this again is going to provide that sort of resistance from melting too quick when that time comes. This is also a fun process to share with kids if you want. It's a little bit messy, and you're just going to take and alternate spreading it out, scraping it up, spreading it out, and scraping it up until the whole thing is nicely incorporated. What we're going to do now is just spread it out flat into a square and put it in the refrigerator to firm back up to be the base of the flaky layer of our croissant. We're going to get it on this roll, and then we're basically going to get it into a 7 by 7 square. Check it one more time. And you can see that we're pretty much about a 7-inch square there. So we're just gonna fold this guy up like this and this. Then we're gonna take that piece, we're gonna set it in the refrigerator to firm up for about a half hour while we make the rest of our dough. And then we're gonna clean up this big old butter mess to be ready for our next phase. See you in a minute. Out of the refrigerator now, we have the butter layer that we made, again, now nice and firm. And we've had the first rising of our dough here. It's done, you know, you see where it's tightened up against the polyfilm. First thing we're gonna do, a little flour. And you can see we're flouring because as this comes out, you can see it really is quite a sticky little dough at this point. So we're gonna get it workable. Try not to incorporate too much flour into this, but it really is going to want to sort of go all over the place. So I'm gonna take it, we're gonna just have a little fun, get it rolled out. And all we're trying to do at this point is get it happy and get it into an 11-inch square where we can create the lamination of the layers. And what I've done is there's a little drawing of what we're doing out there. The pink is this dough and the yellow is the butter. So 11 inches square on the outside, 7 inches square on the inside. Now we're gonna give this a quick measure and see how good we're doing. A little bit big in the sides, a little bit narrow in the middle, so we're going to kind of equal it out here. Get out our butter packet. And if we're lucky, this is all going to come out a single sheet. And remember, it does look like just butter at this part, but we've got that flour that we added earlier to sort of make it stick a little bit as it goes. So this is what we're doing with this, right? And we're just gonna fold the corners in. You're gonna end up with kind of a little bit of pockets in the center. And a little bit thicker in the center maybe, a little bit narrower out towards the sides. And one of the reasons that we have our little dough docker tool is to keep this from sticking. So you can see it's sticking a little bit, so we're just gonna... Now we're gonna take our rolling pin, and we're not really rolling it out yet because it's not very ready to move. You can feel it doesn't yield very much under our skin. We're just going to take from the center out, and we're going to kind of mash it like that. So we're not really so much rolling yet as we are just kind of mashing it out. Now it's up to a size where we can really start to roll it out. So now we're going to switch to a rolling motion of our rolling pin. And if you look, you can just see through the layers here. Just kind of see that little butter popping its way through. So you can see where that really has created its own layer and pocket a little bit. We're going to go to a 14-inch square now. So we're happy in one dimension, we're a little bit long in the other, so we're going to just kind of have a little fun. Get it back sort of where we want it to be. This is where we fold to create more layers. So right now we've got a layer basically of dough than butter than dough, and we're going to work and fold this a couple of times to see if we can end up with lots of little thin layers of butter inside lots of layers of flaky dough and pastry. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take a third of this, and I just always kind of eyeball it, flop it over that way. All right, so back out of the refrigerator again, and you can see as we push it, it's nice and firm once again, not so flexible. So we're just going to do exactly what we did before. Start with square, push it down at first, and then begin to roll it. And we're gonna roll it to another 14-inch square and do the same book fold once again. Gonna go into thirds, right? Pat it down a little bit. And then once again, boom, boom, ending up with, once again, little square. And we're still pretty good in terms of resistance. So now we're going to see if we can jump ahead and get ready to fold and shape. So again, you know, we hope that things stay resistant. So you see that we've now patted this down and rolled it out, and we're at a 14-inch square. So now what we want to do is measure out and cut our triangles. So I'm going to take that 7.5 and 7.5. And then when you notice the pizza wheel cutter before, that's what this is for. We're just going to we're going to cut our first bunch. We're going to take the first half of it, going to pretty much just add a little flour so it doesn't stick to itself. We're going to toss that back in the fridge for a little while to get firm again so that it doesn't get too flexible while we're doing it. So here's now our half a sheet. We started by 14 by 14, cut in half. And we're going to go about 4 2/3 inches. So we're going to take this and cut it into thirds. And it doesn't, of course, have to be exact, but we're just going to attempt to get somewhere into thirds. Again, we're also still going to cut our pizza wheel, and we're going to go half. We're going to take those same pieces, we're going to go in half again on the diagonal. That's what's going to give us our little triangle to make the croissant shape. When we come back to it, we're going to end up with something a little bit like this. We want it to be fairly elastic, so when we pull on it, it still receives. And if we look at it, we should be able to see some little layers of lamination in there. So you can see where it's just going to be flaky and delicious. One little trick that will help us for rolling those out into a croissant shape is to just take the very bottom and just create a little notch there. So that little notch is going to allow it to spread out a little bit more and get a little bit more of that traditional croissant shape. So we're going to pull that apart, and we're going to roll it up on itself. And as we do that, we're just going to stretch this nose out ever so much, which is going to give us that really good traditional croissant shape. So we're going to get that shaped up, a little pinch to hold it in place. Then we're going to take the croissant, make a croissant shaped, and we're going to put the point down so that it just is at the very bottom. Put it in our pan. We're going to do that 6 more times, and then we'll be ready to raise these puppies. Okay, so one special bonus thing that I don't think is in the Baking Illustrated cookbook. One of my favorite, of course, is pain au chocolat, which, if you speak French, my language is going to hurt your ears. If you don't, it just means chocolate croissants. And I like to take, and with, I don't know, half or a third of the ones that I'm doing, fairly reasonable, you might say a tablespoon, I would just say, you know, a palm of chocolate chips. I'm going to take, and we're just going to coordinate them with the roll-up, which is going to create a nice little chocolate pop going in these with when you do it. And there are a million fine chocolates out there. I guess, you know, with where I grew up and growing up with Toll House cookies, this is still just my favorite chocolate to put inside them, just your standard rich and famous semi-sweet chocolate chip. You're going to do that same stretch. You're going to tuck and roll these in, and you're just going to try and do a little more of a push down with your index fingers, sort of sealing that up a little bit so that they don't escape. And then what I do with them so that I can tell them apart from the regular croissants is, rather than creating a true C shape, I just let them be their nice own little, I think of it as sort of a chocolate exclamation point, if you will. That's it. Then they just go and bake the same as the others. We stepped away. These have now risen for a couple of hours, and you can see that they're puffed up nicely. And we can still see, if we look very closely, some nice layers still going on there, so I'm pretty excited. The last part, little egg wash, which puts a nice, beautiful glaze on them. You see that croissant has just got that sheen. That's the egg wash. That's the last thing before we are ready to go. So I'm just going to uncover these, give them a quick painting. And into the oven they go. So they're out of the oven now. They're done. These are their croissants from Baking Illustrated. I hope you can take something good out of the library so you can take something good out of your oven.